Incorporated, and his presentation is called SpongeBob Entrepreneurpants. As you can see, entrepreneur Adam Edmunds founded South Jordan-based Allegiance in 2004, straight out of college. The company helps organizations build customer and employee loyalty, as well as guard against unethical practices. Allegiance serves more than 1,800 organizations around the world and employs over 70 people with offices in Virginia and Utah. The company was recently named one of the 8 emerging elite companies in Utah, and Adam was included as one of both Utah Business Magazine's and Digital IQ's 40 under 40 on those lists. Adam was the 2004 BYU Entrepreneur of the Year and has been named to the V-Spring V100 list the last 4 years. He holds a master's in an accounting degree from BYU and is married with 2 sons. Let's give a warm welcome to Adam Edmunds.
All right, are these turned on? Can you guys hear me? Okay. All right, so remind me, what are your majors here? You guys are undergrads or grad students? Undergrads? ISIS. A little bit of everything. ISIS, business management? Electrical engineering? Accounting? Good man for taking this class then. You too. I didn't take the cool classes when I was in accounting. I took the easiest A's. How painful was last Thursday? Are you guys off suicide watch yet? That was painful. That was painful. Yeah, I was wondering what the mood was here. All right, well, I'll just kind of launch into my presentation here. The last few years that I've given a presentation here, it seemed like there were more questions than I have had time for. So I cut down on some of the slides that I usually present. I'm not going to tell you as much about what Allegiance does. If you want to find out, go to allegiance.com. I'll give you just a few slides on really what we do. But the bulk, I'd like to let SpongeBob and Patrick, give most of my presentation. And who here watches or likes SpongeBob? Okay, a few more than usual. Okay, good. If you haven't watched SpongeBob, it's great. If you've got kids, whoever started SpongeBob was a genius because they were the first to realize that parents will let their kids watch shows that they like to watch too. So the Wiggles, Yo Gabba Gabba, that kind of crap's not allowed at our house. SpongeBob, however, 24/7. It's good stuff. So if you haven't seen it, if you've got little kids, SpongeBob is a good call. Let me just jump into this. So just a real quick overview on Allegiance. We have about 1,800 clients that use one or many of our products. We have about a 95% customer retention rate, and we are a software as a service business, meaning we don't license our software, we don't sell it to people, they basically rent it from us for an annual or a monthly fee. They pay us to have access to our software. So one of the big key indicators for a SaaS company is your retention rate, because it doesn't do a lot of good to rent your software out if no one rents it for a very long time. So we retain most of our clients. We've grown triple-digit in terms of revenue for about 4 years in a row. It's about 75 employees, and we've raised a little more than $9 million in funding over the last several years, which is an interesting and sometimes painful experience. But overall, it's been a real fun ride. We've got, like I said, a lot of clients. We deal with a lot of different kinds of organizations. We deal with a lot of banks, a lot of credit unions, a lot of hospitals. But we do just kind of have clients all over the map. A lot of logos that you probably recognize. And really how the company started, I'll give you kind of the 2-minute history. When I was in school here, well, I'll tell you a little bit of the story later on. But basically, the company I founded was called Silent Whistle. And it was an ethics reporting product that we started right after Sarbanes-Oxley came out. That came out when I was in school. And if you're not familiar with Sarbanes-Oxley, it's a law that was passed almost 6 years ago now that requires publicly traded companies to do a whole bunch of extra stuff. And one of the items that they're required to have in place is a whistleblower system for their employees. Employees have to be given an opportunity to anonymously go report wrongdoing to the board. So that was kind of the original idea. We launched that product, like I said, while I was still in school here. Started getting some companies to sign up. Did all the business idea competitions and business plan competitions. But after a year or so, we realized that company, that Silent Whistle on its own, was probably not ever going to be a really big company, because the average price that we would sell that product for was like $3, $4, $5 a year, which is okay, but it takes you a lot of companies to build something interesting when that's your price point. So we started to look out into maybe building out some more compliance products, more Sarbanes-Oxley products. But what ended up happening is I was introduced by actually John Richards and Gary Williams to a professor here named Gary Rhodes, who you guys have probably had classes from. He runs the Entrepreneurship Center now. Back in '99, he had founded a company called Allegiance Technologies that was built around trying to automate a lot of things he'd been doing for about 20 or 30 years in his consulting business. And he and David Whitlark and a few other professors here, they'd built their careers around trying to help companies build customer and employee loyalty, and find out what drives loyalty. And they'd been building some technology around that for 5 or 6 years, and we ended up acquiring that company in '05, which is where the name Allegiance came from. So Allegiance is now the company name. Silent Whistle is still one of our real strong products. But we now just operate under one company. It's all integrated, and it was, I think, a really smart move for both companies to do that. So here's what we do. You've got these customer bases and employee bases that you're always trying to capture feedback from them. I'm sure you guys have seen a million different surveys, from restaurants that put it on their receipts to emails to paper surveys you get in the mail. So you've got all these different parts of a company that are trying to gather data about employees and customers. And traditionally, it's being done just kind of on a one-off basis, just using a single tool. And everyone's just kind of doing their own thing within the organization. And so really what happens is what we call kind of a tangled web of feedback, where you just have all this data that's pretty valuable, but it's not kept anywhere or consolidated so that you can start to trend and find out really what's going on. So that's what our software does, is we go into a company and we help consolidate all of this research that they're doing, and we host everything, we house all the data, we take care of all the security. So it's a nice, easy sell into a company because their IT department doesn't have to get involved. And it's a real early market. There's a lot of companies trying to do it, and so it's a little bit messy. It's fragmented, as they'd say. So it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of stuff we still have to figure out, a lot that we have figured out, and that's what makes entrepreneurship fun. Is every day is a little bit different. And I travel quite a bit. I think I've flown about 110,000 miles this year, and people always say, well, what do you travel for? And I never have an answer. I'm like, it's always something different. Sometimes we're trying to buy companies, we're trying to raise money, we're trying to find partners, we're trying to sell to customers, it's trying to recruit employees. It's just a different thing every single day. So like I said, everyone comes to us and we help them house all the data. We'll skip this slide. Okay. Really what I found interests students the most here, I was down here for the Founders Conference a few weeks ago, where all the old, the rich old entrepreneurs come back to BYU, and they judge the Student Entrepreneur of the Year competition, and they do it again in April when they have the business plan competition. It's a bunch of these old folks, for the most part, that come in and they talk about their businesses. And what I found I can add value here is I was sitting in these seats literally 4 years ago, and I'd hear presentations like this, and I think, how in the world did you get there? It seems like an impossible thing, when in reality it's really not that hard. So what I've found people like about the presentation is it's kind of, this is a fun little prezo I'll go through, and there's kind of 7 or 8 steps that lead SpongeBob and Patrick to kind of an entrepreneurial path. And it's funny, when I saw this episode a few years ago, I was watching it with at the time he was probably 3, and I was like, that's me. These things kept happening, and I was like, that was me. I remember when that happened to me trying to build this company. I think by just kind of going through these, you'll kind of get a feel for really what I went through just starting a business straight out of school, which is a pretty scary thing. You go to school to go and get a job, usually. I took a little bit of a different path. So I'll jump into this clip. And this is showing how the first thing you have to do, obviously, is you have to decide, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. You know, being an entrepreneur is not something you can dabble in and say, I'll try that out a bit. You either do it or you don't do it. So let me launch the first one here.
What'd you get?
Let's see. Gary. Hey, amazing! That's funny. I don't remember subscribing to Fancy Living Digest. Look at these glossy depictions of a higher standard of living. This guy's so rich, he has a swimming pool in his swimming pool.
This guy's got shoes.
Give me that. You mean my mail, eh?
You're lucky I don't report you to the authorities.
Hey, Frederick, how do the people in that magazine get all that money?
They're entrepreneurs. They sell things to people.
What kind of things?
How should I know? Things people want to buy. Keep your paws off my mail.
That's it, Patrick. We gotta become entrepreneurs.
Is that gonna hurt?
Okay, so what usually drives people to be an entrepreneur? Throw out some ideas. What usually is the motivating factor? Lifestyle, that's one you hear a lot.
You don't work for anybody else.
You're your own boss. Let's see, where's my mouse? That is usually the biggest reason people get into entrepreneurship. That's what motivated SpongeBob and Patrick, is they see all these rich people with these great things, and they think, hey, I would like that. That sounds nice. Yes, please. But that shouldn't be the only reason you get in. You know, I can admit there's a lot of reasons that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. One was I was afraid to get a job. I went through the MAC program. I did the MAC program because, number one, you can get through it quick. It's highly ranked. And it was kind of easy A's for me. Numbers really come easy for me. So it seemed like I can go through this and it will be the least amount of homework, the quickest way out. Sounds good. And somewhere along that path, I got sucked into the public accounting funnel that is really good here at BYU. They produce really good grads that are ready to go into public accounting for a few years and go on to be really good controllers and CFOs. That wasn't necessarily what I wanted to be, although I did sign up for it. I had accepted an offer from KPMG in Salt Lake to go and work as an auditor there. I never did an internship. I just signed on full-time right out of school. And then as my buddies that I was going to school with, they went out and did these internships, and they came back, and they looked like 10 years older. And I was like, how was your internship? And they're like, 90 hours a week. At least I got paid overtime. And it just started to kind of worry me that I was getting into a profession that wasn't really for me. I needed a bit more freedom than that. And nothing, against public accounting. It's a really good field, and it can prepare people for a really good career. But for me, it just wasn't sounding like the kind of thing I wanted to do. But, I didn't really have any other idea of what I wanted to do. So I started to just get involved in kind of the entrepreneurship stuff they had going on. I started to do some business plan competitions. I got on a couple teams one year. We won in 2002, I think. I was on the team that won the non-profit portion of the business plan competition. We had some idea of helping students learn what careers were about, which is probably something I needed back then. And then I was on some like door-to-door, what was that business team I was on? It was like door-to-door selling of sports tickets. And we thought it was awesome, and we we submitted it, and we're like, oh, we're going to be in the finals. And then we get the results back, and they cut it down to 10 first, and they just say yes or no. You don't really learn why. And we were told no, and I was like, all right, whatever. It wasn't my idea. I thought it was cool, though. But the guy whose idea it was like, no, we're going to find out why. And so we went and met with a guy named Joe Olivier, who's one of the judges. And I don't know if you've met Joe, but he's the kind of guy, it would remind you of someone that was in the mafia. In fact, Josh James and John Pestana, the Omniture founders, he was kind of their real early mentor, and they call him the Godfather. He's kind of like that. So we go and sit down, and he's like, who are you guys? And he said, he said the name of the business. I don't even remember. He said, that's the dumbest business plan I've ever read. I was like, nice. So there's, going through that process, you learn real quick, what's good and what isn't. These idea competitions are really great. And BYU, aside from maybe Stanford, probably has the best entrepreneurial program in the entire country. And the people that come back and donate their time and their money to the entrepreneurship program, these are like big-time people. Really, Stanford's the only one I know that's bigger because you've got like the Google guys and the Hewletts and the Packards that are donating their money. But once I got tied in, I started to meet other people that kind of shared my interest in being an entrepreneur. And one in particular was Dave Bateman. I don't know if you guys have heard him speak. He's the CEO of Property Solutions, but he's probably more famous for founding DearElder.com. And he's a year older than me. He was kind of a year ahead of me in school, and he'd already done Dear Elder, and that's just a sweet little business that he owns by himself, and it cash flows him like crazy. And then he was starting this Property Solutions company. And I just started to hang around him. I still have the first email I sent to him, and my wife reads it, and she's like, "You were a stalker." I'm like, "Yeah, I kind of was." But I just wanted to be around people who were trying this out to see if it was something that would be interesting. And it turned out I watched Dave do it, and I'm like, if Dave could do it, I can do this. It's really more about your passion and your energy than how smart you are or how many things you've done before in your life. And then the other thing that really kind of threw me over, once I kind of had come up with the idea for Silent Whistle, what really pushed me over is I had a class from Larry Miller my last semester here, and he doesn't teach it. I wish he did. It was the best class I had at BYU. And if you don't know Larry Miller, if you're not from Utah, he owns the Jazz and all these dealerships. And he said in that class, he started his entrepreneurial career at 38. And he said, look, that rarely happens that you become an entrepreneur that late in your life. And he said, the only reason I did it is because I was extremely cheap. And by the time he was 38, he'd saved up, in today's dollars, probably about 300 grand in cash. I think he'd said he'd paid his house off and he had like 300 grand. So that allowed him to buy his first dealership and kind of launched him. But he said, typically that doesn't happen. And he just said, I can tell you guys, if you get a bunch of kids and a mortgage and you get used to a salary, you won't be able to be an entrepreneur. It's just you won't be able to. Your lifestyle won't allow you to do what entrepreneurs have to do because you have to go without salaries for a long time. And so I was really well prepared in knowing that, I did not make any money for 18 months. So we went and sold our house, and I sold my Beamer, and we just got down back into student housing, actually, here. And it was like, hey, let's make a run at this. But he just said, if you guys want to be entrepreneurs, do it now because you're used to eating ramen noodles. And if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you can always go get a job because you got a good education. So that's kind of the approach. That's kind of what drove me in deciding to be an entrepreneur. So be careful about, the decision. But, my advice, if you're even thinking about it, who here has considered being a business owner or an entrepreneur? So a lot of you, most of you. I would just start getting involved while you're still here. Because once you leave here, it's a lot tougher to find the help. While you're here, guys like John and Gary Rhodes and all these people will help you as much as you need or want. And that's a short window you'll have to have that quality of people giving you free advice. Okay, so you decide you want to be an entrepreneur, and then it's trying to find the idea. And like I said, I went through a few business plan competitions, and it took me a little while to finally find it. So let's watch SpongeBob and Patrick find their idea.
Quick, Patrick, without thinking, if you could have anything in the world right now, what would it be?
Oh, more time for thinking.
No, something you would pay for.
A chocolate bar?
That's a great idea, Pat. We'll be traveling chocolate bar salesmen. Fancy living? Here we come.
Make way for a couple of entrepreneurs.
All right, so your idea can be that simple. What's really cool about coming back and judging business plan competitions and the Entrepreneur of the Year contest is you see all these different businesses. And I wanted to start a high-tech company, a software company. I wanted to be the next Omniture. And that's all I ever thought about. And then I come back and I see all these companies that it's as simple as, let's go buy something in China, we'll build a website, and we'll sell it here for more than we paid. That works. There's a lot of ideas that can work. It's really more about the entrepreneur than the idea. And just to tell you the story about how I came up with my idea, I was actually sitting in a in a class like this, and the presenter was a guy that founded Protiviti. And so when Enron and WorldCom happened, and Anderson went down the toilet, a lot of all the different Arthur Anderson offices just kind of broke apart. Some of them got sucked into other accounting firms, but a group of actually old BYU guys went and started a consulting firm called Protiviti that was they were built to consult on Sarbanes-Oxley. And the guy speaking was one of the founders, and he just brought up, he said, whenever legislation like this is passed, it creates a bubble of new opportunity. And entrepreneurs, people who can identify the opportunities, can really make a lot of money off of this kind of stuff. And I don't know, Protiviti was sold not long after it was founded for just a ton of money. And that's really what kind of sparked my peak and that's kind of how I got down that Sarbanes-Oxley alley and kind of combined it with this high-tech thing I wanted to build, and that's how Silent Whistle was born. But what he said was true, is there's just different things that happen in the economy that just kind of create little windows of opportunity. And there's things that happen with technology, and you look what happened with the iPhone. That's something that created a little new economy, and you had a lot of companies go build apps to get sold on the iPhone store. Same thing with any sort of disruptive technologies or disruptive legislation, or with all the don't you think it's funny how there's all these hurricanes the last 2 years, and now how many food storage companies are there? There's like dozens of them all of a sudden, and it's just those are the kind of things you just got to watch for. And that's usually where the new opportunities arise, because chances are you're not going to go say. Go identify a company like Johnson & Johnson or Omniture or Overstock and say, I'm going to do that, but better and cheaper. That's probably not going to happen. You're either going to have to do it different, or you're going to have to kind of watch for one of these new opportunities. And what happened with Silent Whistle is that market had already existed. It just happened with telephone lines. And so we just kind of put a new spin on it and said, we're going to do it a little bit different. And it kind of took off. So if you're going to be a chocolate bar salesman, you better make something new out of it. Okay, wait, I skipped one. Okay, so like I told you about the Joel Levere story, when he said that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard, I got a lot of that early on from a lot of people. And it's something you just need to learn to deal with if you want to be an entrepreneur, is you're going to have a lot of people tell you you're an idiot. From your family, to your friends, to your professors. I had a couple professors say, that's stupid. Well, you just got this great degree. Why aren't you going into the career that you're all set up for? And it's just something you got to get used to. And SpongeBob and Patrick go through it as well.
Okay, Patrick, this is it. The first step on our road to living fancy. Just follow my lead. Good afternoon, sir. Could we interest you in some chocolate?
Chocolate? Did you say chocolate?
Yes, sir. With or without nuts.
Chocolate? Chocolate! 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 Chocolate!
Okay, so this story is going to tie back in a little later. Has anyone seen this episode, by the way? All right. So when we entered Silent Whistle into the business plan competition, I was certain we would win. Steve Albrecht. Steve Albrecht still here? Okay. So Steve Albrecht is like the Michael Jordan of fraud detection for the world. I mean, he is the man when it comes to fraud detection. He gets paid like $25,000 a day to be an expert witness in big fraud cases. Wouldn't that be a sweet gig? Oh, man. So Steve Albrecht was an investor. And he was sitting in the room when I presented with all of the judges. And we had a video of him in the presentation saying, oh, Silent Whistle is going to be successful. So I was like, we're going to win. And I ended up finding out the judges that they bring in are a bunch of venture capitalists that have ties back to BYU. Most of them are, LDS BYU guys from all over the country. And I ended up finding out that one of them in particular torpedoed our company. And he said that he'd owned a company like that before. People don't buy stuff when they have to because of legislation. This thing will never work. It's a bad idea. I didn't know that at the time. We went to a reception that night after we presented, and it was going, you were going from the top 10 to the 3 finalists, and I was just certain we were in the top 3. And so we went to the reception where we got to meet all the judges, and I talked to this one guy, and he just said, "Oh, yeah, I wanted to talk to you. Your idea is just stupid. That will never work. I've owned a company that did sexual harassment training, and that's a law in California that you have to have it. So we started a company around it, and it was a complete failure. It's one of the worst failures I've ever had." And I was like, "Yeah, well, you don't know what you're talking about, whatever." So I ended up finding out we didn't make the top 3, and I ended up finding out 6 months, a year later, as I started to kind of figure out, because no one wants to tell you, but over time they'll start to tell you stuff. He torpedoed it for us. He basically kept us from being in the top 3, and I think the 3 companies that finished ahead of us, none of them are even in business or ever even started. So I'm not bitter, though, as you can tell. Here's what's so sad about that. We got beat by a tree company here. Trees beat us. And then we went to the Utah Challenge, which is all the colleges, and an ice cream company beat us. It's like, ice cream and trees? Jeez. Did I skip another? Oh, okay. All right, so we're going to come back to that last story later on. Okay, so one of the first things you'll learn when you become an entrepreneur is you have to learn how to bootstrap. And it's kind of a nerdy term, but it just means you got to learn how to do a lot on a little budget. And I had so many stories about this one. Let's watch SpongeBob and Patrick first, though. I don't want the cursor. There we go.
Chocolate bars, eh?
Yes, sir, we are chocolate bar salesmen.
Couple of mediocre salesmen, if you ask me. That's no way to carry your merchandise. No, wrong. You guys want to be good salesmen, right?
Oh, most certainly, sir.
Well, no self-respecting candy bar salesman would be caught dead without one of these.
Wow, what is it?
It's a candy bar bag, you knucklehead. It's specially designed to cradle each candy bar in velvet-lined comfort. I'm wasting my time. You don't need these bags. So long, boys. Happy hunting. Suckers.
Okay. So the first thing you need to do if you decide to be an entrepreneur when you get your idea and everything, you need to come up with an advisory board. And I had a really, really good one early on. And about every other month I'd have an advisory board meeting. And it's where I would just kind of bring ideas. And they would give me feedback on stuff, tell me what they thought we could do, tell me how they could help. And, a couple weeks before this advisory board meeting, a guy who was on our business plan team said, "Oh, I've got this friend who works for the Deseret News. And they've got a deal that they want to talk to us. The Deseret News wants to talk to us." It's like, wow, that's pretty sweet. We better talk to them. So meet up with these people, and they're like, okay, once a year, it's actually in October. It should be coming out any day. Once a year, we put this special business section in the newspaper. Once a year, it's very exclusive. And for $10,000, we'll sell you the front page. We'll do a big story on you. And I was like, this is awesome. I mean, 10 grand. I had 50 grand in the bank. I figured this is on 20% of my cash. That doesn't seem too bad. All right. So I was all pumped about it, and I had just see their face. That was my face. Just like, I'm going to be on the front page of this special business section. Everyone's going to see me and know I'm famous. So it was kind of like fancy living. Here I come. So I'm all pumped about this. This is the game-changing moment of the company, and I bring in this advisory board. There's 5 or 6 guys on it. They're all very experienced entrepreneurs and business executives, much older and smarter than me. And I'm kind of saving this little nugget for the end of the presentation. And it's like, all right, let me just tell you guys what I've been doing. And I just kind of pull it out. I'm like, here's what we're doing. 10 grand. Check this out. And I was expecting like a round of applause. And I, curiously, I look around at all of them, and they're all like, it was kind of trying to decide who's going to tell him. And John knew me the best. So John's like, Adam, I don't know if this is the best use of your capital. And I was just shocked. And after he said it, then it opened up, and everyone was like, yeah. And it was about 10 minutes of Adam being called an idiot. And, you know, if you don't have an advisory board, it's really easy when you start to just burn through money. There's a lot of these little like blood-sucking consulting firms and things that, oh, we have a newly funded entrepreneur. Great. Well, here's what we can sell you. And I burned through so much money in the early days just on stupid things. I sponsored some event for like $5,000 that there was like 30 people at. None of them would ever even buy my product. Just dumb things. And you know, this is something that some people are better at than others. I had to learn it the hard way. Some entrepreneurs are just cheap to begin with, and they do a really good job of it, and they never waste money. But if you don't have that, you can lose. You know, $50,000 sounds like a lot. I was like, $50,000, I'll never run out of money. And then like a month later, I was like, I only have $3,000 left, and I have nothing to show for it. Great. So bootstrapping, can't say enough about that. Okay, so the next thing you have to figure out how to do is sell. If you do not like to sell, do not be an entrepreneur. But if you're some sort of like technology geek and you've got the next YouTube idea, go find someone that can sell. Because you're selling 100% of the time. When you're trying to raise money, when you're trying to recruit employees, when you're trying to sell the product, everything you do as an entrepreneur, especially in the early days, is you're selling a dream. You're selling yourself, you're selling your idea, you're selling everything. And it's really, I had no idea, but you have to be a good salesman. So let's watch SpongeBob and Patrick do some selling here. Come on. There we go.
Oh, what can I do for you two nice young men? We're selling chocolate bars. Would you like to buy one? That sounds heavenly. I'll take one. One chocolate bar coming up. Huh? Remember, Patrick, flatter the customer. Make him feel good.
Hello?
I love you.
I think you laid it on a teensy bit thick there, old pal. Let me try.
Please, go away.
How you doing?
How am I doing?
Want to buy some chocolate?
We gotta go! Sorry, chocolate has sugar, and sugar turns to bubbling fat. Isn't that right, rubber boy?
So, one chocolate bar. I have a feeling we're too easily distracted. Let's make a pact right now that we will stay focused on selling at the next house.
What?
Let's shake on it.
Did you say something?
Remember, Patrick, focus.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. We're selling chocolate bars.
Why is Chubby here staring at me?
Focusing.
Back up, Jack.
Nice place you got here.
All right. This was a painful, embarrassing lesson to learn for me. So let me tell you about my first story. Before we really even had a product that worked very well, I had some people take pity on me. Like Patrick Byrne, the CEO of Overstock, was like, you poor fool, I'll buy your product. And Tom Stockham, the CEO of MyFamily.com. Luckily, I had a few of those guys kind of take pity on me. My first real time I had to go sell to someone, though, was IHC. And this was a big deal for us. We pulled a lot of strings to get in. We got a meeting with the entire executive team at IHC. And this was, so this was my first real time trying to sell the product. And so the lady that set it up for me was kind of the executive assistant for the entire team, or she was office of the president. I don't remember what her title was. But, she was just like, look, you got to come in. You got to be quick, succinct with these people. They don't have a lot of time. They don't need a lot of explanation. Show them what you have. Show them why they need it, and then just shut up and get out. Don't waste their time. So I'd never really sold before. So I show up, I don't know, 2 minutes before the meeting starts. And I'm like, all right, well, where do we go? And so she's like, where have you been? I'm like, what? We have 2 minutes. So she takes me into the conference room. And, I mean, as soon as I get there, people start showing up. There's probably about 9 people. And this is like the CEO, the COO, you know, all the top people at IHC. So I'm sitting there, and then I realize I've never, in all my years here at BYU, I'd never actually used a projector before. I didn't know how to like send the signal out to the projector. So I'm sitting there, I fire up my computer. First of all, it was an old compact, it was my old laptop from school. And it took, I knew it, took like 5 minutes to boot up every time. So I'm there firing it up, just, how are you? As people are like coming in. Before I even get my laptop booted up, everyone's there. So then there's me with like sweat starting to come down my face as I'm frantically trying to figure out how to get the projector to work. And kind of this executive assistant comes over and she's like, you idiot. And she's trying to help me get it up. And, you know, we're just not getting it to work. And I see out of the corner of my eye, people start getting up and leaving. And by the time we got it up, I'm like, okay, there, ready? And I looked up and everyone was gone except for her. So in the course of me arriving to leaving, everyone had come in, probably looked at me with a lot of pity, and left. And she basically looked at me, she's like, well, thanks. I guess you can go now. So that was a very painful lesson. Another one was, you saw where SpongeBob and Patrick tried to take that, like, let's be friends, let's have kind of a personal approach. So we were pitching this VP of HR, and the guy that was one of our sales guys who'd been on the business plan team, who was a terrible salesperson, and I didn't recognize that soon enough. But I was like, you know, kind of like, well, let's go be friends with these people. Let's like have a personal conversation, and then we'll become friends, and they'll buy our stuff if they like us. So we go into his office, and, you know, he's just basically, you know, what are your backgrounds? And rather than saying he's got an MBA from BYU and all this, he's talking about his lineage. I'm 1/16 Native American. I'm 1/4 Greek. I'm 1/4 Brazilian. I'm 1/8 this. I'm, you know, 1/16 this. And he's like, wow, that's quite a mix you've got there. And he's like, yeah, I've got a Greek face and a Brazilian butt. Let me show you. So he stands up and he's like modeling his butt, his Brazilian butt for this guy. And I'm sitting there the whole time just like, I don't think this is what you're supposed to do. But I had no idea. And it's just so many stories like that are so embarrassing. I once had our graphic designer, who was a student, I figured, here's what we'll do. We'll do sales trainings every morning, and we'll take turns giving the sales training. And this was like a part-time graphic designer that was in school, and I'm like, give a sales training. He's like, what are you talking about? I do your design work 10 hours a week. It was bad. It was bad early days. Oh, bad. Okay. The next thing you have to be able to do is, once you start getting this feedback, good and bad, you have to be able to kind of tweak your strategy, kind of change directions, and be able to recognize that quickly. Because your first idea, I was always told this, that whatever your business plan says, 2 years later, maybe like 20% of it will be true. The rest you will have changed. So let's watch SpongeBob and Patrick go through that.
We're not doing so well, Patrick. We need a new approach, a new tactic.
Oh, I got it. Let's get naked.
No, let's save that for when we're selling real estate. There must be something. What was the reason we bought those ads?
You said we were mediocre.
That's it. He made us feel special.
Yeah, you did. I'm going back to my more bags.
Adding something to this selling game that was just not getting. Other people do it. I mean, look at that.
Eat barnacle chips. They're delicious.
They are most certainly not delicious.
Not the way I use them.
Yet they sell millions of bags a day.
Well, maybe if they didn't stretch the truth, they wouldn't sell as many.
That's it, Patrick. We've got to stretch the truth.
Okay. So you have to be able to, you know, tweak your product, kind of go a little bit of a different direction to go where the market's going. And that requires what I call selling the dream. That's the name of a book by Guy Kawasaki. It's a good book if you ever want to read it. Now, I'm not saying you go lie. I'm saying you sell the dream. They're very different. So let's watch SpongeBob and Patrick sell the dream here.
We'll work as a team. Let me get this customer warmed up, and then you come in for the kill.
The kill.
Yes? Hello, young lady. We're selling chocolate. Is your mother home? Bob! What was all that yelling? Just can't wait for me to die, can you? They're selling chocolates. Chocolate? Yeah. What are they selling? Chocolate. What? Chocolate. I can't hear you. They're selling chocolate. They're selling chocolate. Yeah. Chocolate. I remember when they first invented chocolate. Sweet, sweet chocolate. I always hated it. Oh, but this chocolate's not for eating. It's for...
You rub it on your skin, and it makes you live forever.
Whatever you say, I'll take one. Come on, you lazy Mary. Start rubbing me with that chocolate. I hate you. He's exaggerating the truth. We'll be fancy living in no time.
Hooray for lying!
It'll make your hair grow.
Great. My wife's trying to grow a beard.
It'll make you sound smart.
Oh, take sweaty.
It'll keep your face from getting any uglier. Just in time. Up on the ground.
It'll bring world peace.
You what you lost.
You'll rule the world.
Okay, like I said, I'm not a proponent of lying. But every entrepreneur, Gary Williams once told me early on, he said, every entrepreneur is out there selling something that doesn't quite exist. The difference between those who are successful and those who fail are the ones who are able to deliver on it. So we still have that term. We still use that term, selling the dream. And so we still will have companies come to us and say, we need your product to do these 10 things, and we'll do 7 of them. And the sales guy will say, we do all of them. And so he'll come back to the product team and say, I just sold a deal, and it's a selling the dream deal. And we immediately know what that means, and we always know exactly how long it's going to take to implement, and how long our sales cycle is, how long it takes to implement, and we always deliver. The customer always gets exactly what they bought. And that's always a part of being an entrepreneur. You always have to go a little bit beyond where you're currently at, because when you're building something from nothing, that's always going to happen, and you have to be prepared to be able to put it. That's why you always hear entrepreneurs working 90 and 100 hours a week. If they had what they were selling, they would be working 40 hours a week. All right. And then, finally, after you go through all this, success, I find, is usually from an unexpected source.
Don't get me wrong, Patrick. It's great that we helped that guy out, but there's no one left in town to sell chocolate bars to. Whoa! Let's face it, Patrick. We're failures.
I can live with that.
Let's change our names to Wives and Father.
Finally! I've been trying to catch you boys all day! Now that I've got you right where I want you, I'd like to buy all your chocolate.
Thank you for your patronage.
Are we living the fancy life yet, SpongeBob?
Not yet, Pally. First we gotta spend all the money.
Well, what are we going to spend it on?
Good evening, sir. Table 1, please.
Sorry, but the whole restaurant has been rented to a private party.
But it's my only night to be fancy. Who could afford to rent out the whole restaurant?
Oh, a couple of rich entrepreneurs and their dates.
So, how long have you two ladies known each other? What? What did he say?
There you have it. So, So the way that ties back in, you remember the guy I told you about who told me my idea was stupid in this very room after the business plan competition. This was like, I don't know, 4 years ago or more. A year and a half ago, he invested $5.7 million into the company. So it all came back around, and he bought all the chocolate. The other steps that, it's a SpongeBob episode, so you got to throw me a bone here. There's a few more steps. Here's some of the additional steps. If you want to get into entrepreneurship, you have to be good at these kind of things. Networking, being able to identify good employees, being able to identify what your strengths are, what your strengths are not, and finding people who can complement those. Never say die attitude. The beauty of a free meal. What that means is you need to, the entrepreneurs that I've seen have a lot of success quicker, is they know that all these big rich guys who can give really good advice, they're always really busy, but they'll always go to lunch if you buy it for them. And I probably spent, my first year, I probably spent $4,000 or $5,000 just taking people to lunch every day. And they'll always let you buy them food. So you'll get a lot of value out of it. Be willing to admit what you don't know, and the main thing is to keep the main thing, and it's real easy to just be busy being busy when you're an entrepreneur. Just doing stuff, but not really accomplishing anything. So you got to make sure you keep on top of that. That's it. So questions, I guess, unless we're out of time. Yeah. When I first started, what does never say die mean? So when I first started, people would always ask the question, what if it doesn't work? And my response was, it will. And they would say, but what if it doesn't? And my response was, maybe you didn't hear me, it will. You just have to, no matter what, you're going to make it succeed. And that's probably the biggest determinant for success is your refusal to stop. And that's a pretty important piece of it.
All right, well, we're going to have a reception
Okay.
right now.